Hello and welcome to another episode of Threat Update. I'm Killian Englert. Joining me today, as usual, is Ryan O'Boyle, and we have a very special guest with us, Kyle from the Incident Response Team. Kyle, how's it going?
Not bad. How are you?
Very good. Thank you very much. We have a great episode for everyone today. So, maybe great in, I'll table that one a little bit, but interesting at least. So we're here to talk about some of the zero-day exploits we've seen recently. We've had big ones like the Exchange proxy log on zero-day that everyone I know is still battling right now. But we had a couple other ones very recently that got overshadowed just a little bit by this. We had a Microsoft Office 365 zero-day that was discovered very recently, and we also had one in the big IP F5 product as well. And the commonality between all these and these particular last two is that what they allow attackers to do is connect to these resources without any type of password or authentication. So in the case of the F5 vulnerability, it allows attackers to run basically whatever code that they want on that device without requiring any type of credentials, essentially making that external attacker an insider potentially on a network at that point. So as these attackers go out, and if they're maybe using something like Shodan to scan for these vulnerable devices on the internet, they could be running basically indiscriminate attacks, just seeing where they can go. So I wanted to bring on Ryan and Kyle to give us a little bit of background on that. So I'll ask Kyle, I guess, to start off with. So Kyle, if an attacker gets that foothold on the F5 device, for example, they can run that arbitrary code. Typically, what's the first thing that they want to do when connecting in? Like, what would that first step of the attack look like from their perspective?
Yeah, Killian. So generally, the first thing you're going to be looking at doing once you've kind of gotten that foothold is going to be reconnaissance, so
Sure.
identifying services or maybe open ports. Things like running reverse DNS lookups,
Yeah.
scans, IP scans, all that kind of thing. Kind of get an idea and build that picture of the environment that you're in.
That makes a lot of sense. So yeah, if it's indiscriminate, just to make sure that I'm understanding, the audience is understanding, they don't know what's back there, so they have to do those reverse DNS lookups, for example, to map out the servers. So that's pretty clever, and I mean in a bad way, but we've seen it so many times.
Right.
Once they kind of have that idea, this could be Ryan or Kyle. Once they have that kind of idea of what they want to look at, typically, what's that next move, or what do you think that next step typically is that we see, at least in your guys' investigations?
I
Ryan,
can jump in there. Yeah. So, we're generally seeing some lateral movement next.
Yeah.
The attackers, once they have that initial recon complete and they start to have a better idea of what else is around them,
Right.
then they want to start to pivot to other devices on the network.
Sure.
Ultimately working their way towards some sort of data repository.
Right.
They're there for a reason, right? More often than not, they want to get their hands on some sort of data.
Absolutely. So they've gotten that foothold. They've learned kind of what's out there in the organization. Now they're going to pivot and try and move around. At what point do we typically see them trying to escalate their privileges here? Which phase in the attack would that come into?
Yeah, I think part of the lateral movement phase, once they identify where they want to go, they're probably going to run into a roadblock at some point, and then we're going to see them, try to escalate privileges. It's pretty common to see as they're moving from, box to box, device to device, scraping for credentials, scanning for, credential footprint. And they're going to be trying to see, what they can get their hands on with the account that they have, and then if needed, what other accounts are out there.
Makes a lot of sense. What I just noticed is actually my video is frozen, but I'm still here. I promise I'm live. I'm not a hologram. So we'll just keep rolling on. This is the fun of being completely live on the internet. We can have all sorts of weird experiences, right? So once they've kind of done that and maybe pivoted around and gotten access to higher credentials, and maybe found that data, what's the step after that? What do they do? I mean, walk us through what you've seen in the field.
Well, maybe I'll throw that one to Kyle. Kyle, I know you've been on a couple investigations recently.
Yeah. Usually once they've got their hands on that data, they're gonna be looking at like exfiltration. So getting it, in a way that's covert enough that's not immediately identified by IDS or APS, and slowly moving that information out of the organization, commonly through DNS tunneling. So they're actually making queries out to name servers and actually hiding information in there. So it's just looking for channels to get that information out. Is usually the next step after that.
Makes sense. So when, we've kind of walked through a pretty standard attack flow that we've seen in a lot of these things. Typically, in your investigations, where are the points that we can help people catch these sorts of things? Or how would you go about, if a customer came and said, listen, I'm concerned about this. I have one of these vulnerable devices. I've patched it. And if you have one, please patch it. But, maybe they're concerned that the attackers already established that foothold. How would you walk them through an investigation? Or Kyle or Ryan, I'll let you guys take that.
Yeah, we're generally looking at a couple different areas when trying to identify things like recon. I think monitoring some of your your perimeter telemetries are really important, like DNS traffic, and also things like web proxy traffic for any inbound or outbound connections. The lateral movement component, I think monitoring Active Directory is so critical. Being able to understand how users are connecting to different devices and generating authentication or access requests, and then being able to monitor the data itself is so important. It's great to have all the warning bells and the whistles in the world telling us that something is happening, but if
Right.
we can't correlate it back to the files and the folders that were touched, then it gets hard to start to answer those tough questions that come next.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we close out, once we've kind of seen that in maybe the exfiltration phase, and I'll ask Kyle this. Any tips in terms of what you want to monitor at the perimeter to see if you can spot any of these types of exfiltration? Because that's typically one of the last stages in it. Once the attackers found what they want and they're taking it out. What would you typically look for to see if you can spot that?
Yeah, so one of the things looking for, at least from a Varonis standpoint, is looking for those increased number of queries to DNS servers,
Right.
maybe that they haven't queried before. And basically nmask, looking for those nmask DNS queries. Also, if you're monitoring proxy, you can monitor the traffic outbound there as well. So those are just a couple ways you can kind of check and cue in on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate that. And thank you for walking us through this kind of process. I know a lot of people are facing these types of risks. It seems like these 0 days are getting more frequent. We're discovering them. People are getting hit with them. So there's a lot that the IT and security folks out there watching have on their plate. So it's great that we have some tips for them. So the other thing I want to point out too is, of course, if you have questions, if you're a Varonis customer, if you're interested, you can of course reach out to us. If you suspect some of this, someone on Ryan's team or Kyle can jump on. We have the incident response service to help out. So that's, I guess, my big takeaway is that we're here to help if you're worried about this, and we offer these services, of course, to help figure out what's going on in the organization. So if you enjoyed this content, please consider subscribing to the channel. We put out these videos very frequently. If you enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up or maybe even leave a comment. We always read those and we always really appreciate it. So thank you so much, Ryan and Kyle, for joining me today. Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. We'll look forward to talking to you again soon. Take care.
Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thanks all.